Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Michelle Warbeck. I appreciate you signing in today to learn a little bit more about the task intake package. Just a little bit of background on why we're hosting this webinar, then we'll just jump into the content. You'll see this is very kind of detail-oriented, exactly how to fill out the forms. I'll go through the forms one by one. I'll take a pause at the end of each section to see if you have any questions, and of course, we can have more questions and answers at the end. So briefly, why we decided to host this webinar is that we rolled out our new integrated singular intake package about a year ago, actually more than a year ago. And so we realized that some of these forms are now expiring. There were forms that had a 1-year expiration date, and we are reminding everyone to bring in their clients during the month of July to update forms as well as some other things. And we felt that it was important to just remind everyone how to successfully complete the forms. We also noticed that there were some things that caused some confusion. We want to make sure that there's clarity on how to answer these questions. And finally, there's a new managed care relationship that is going to require some special documentation, a particular set of words, as well as an extra form. So we will cover all of that for you today. And like I said, we're just going to jump right into this and work through filling out these forms. What forms do we use? We have a consent, an authorization, both for individual communications as well as group, and we'll clarify today when you use which of these. We have the guarantee and also electronic communication. So first up is our consent. In addition to the PowerPoint, you should have received a packet of materials. I just went ahead and copied onto the screen the relevant part that I wanted to cover. And you'll see here, this is a portion of the consent where you're checking boxes on the information received. The important things to remember here are that all of the boxes need to be checked. I think it comes as a standard with some of them checked, but if you look here in your sample forms, you'll see that now we are saying, please check all of the boxes, that they've received the fee schedule, the clients have received the notice of privacy practices, that they've received the appropriate program brochure for the program they're participating in. I'd like to have a copy of the Clearing Your Criminal Record brochure, that you've taken care of that. Same with the Balanced and Restorative Justice Program brochure. They understand that a complete list of rights is posted in every task office and that a written copy is available upon their request, and also that they agreed to participate in the services described in the program brochure. So the pointers on this form, check all the boxes. Make sure you provide everything required. Everyone gets a notice of privacy practices. Everybody gets a notice of client rights. And then when you look at the additional materials as required or requested, if you have questions about whether or not a form is required, check with your director. And clients are always welcome to have those if they're interested. A couple of other pointers on this form, when you look at the items to be handed out, we are going to start keeping the most current versions of all of those forms on the ECR. You'll notice that some of them are already there, and I would just request that you always go to the more current version. For instance, a notice of privacy practices has changed over the past several weeks, and so if you have an old form somewhere in your materials and you continue to copy or use that one, that's not going to give you the most current information, and we do need you to use those versions to keep us compliant. I also wanted to share with you that we have a new Welcome to Task binder that was distributed to all of the administrators last week on Tuesday at their admin meeting. The binder simply on the outside says Welcome to Task. It indicates that a copy of all the materials in the binder are available from the front desk, but it allows clients to look at the privacy practices, the client rights statement, as well as the consent, assignment, both authorizations, electronic communications, and the visitor safety guidelines. So at this point, are there any questions regarding the consent? This is a pretty basic form, but any questions about the material that we covered or that we covered here? All right, hearing no questions, We'll continue to move on. And again, if you think of something, we can cover that at the Q&A at the end of the session as well. Okay. Sorry, we're doing the technology. We're going to get everyone remuted. Actually, I just want to take them off mute.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the next form is the authorization. The first sample authorization is the individual authorization, and here's an example where John Doe, our client, wants Jane Doe, his wife, to be able to receive information. You will also notice that all the boxes are checked. In this case, it wouldn't be necessary for the client to check all the boxes, so if they decide that they don't want everything shared with a spouse or a loved one, that's fine. Go ahead and uncheck any of the boxes that indicate what they don't want to share, and you can complete the rest of the form. This form only authorizes one-on-one communication. So if I'm the case manager, I can contact Jane and remind Jane of Joe's appointment, check and see how Joe is doing, find out when he missed the appointment yesterday, if there's a way to reach him, or if she knows what happened. So anything that you would use a collateral contact or a family member for is a really good use of this authorization. It will not allow you to redisclose anything that Jane Doe tells you. So if the judge wants to know how Joe's wife thinks he's doing, you won't be able to redisclose that to the judge. But it does allow you to have that one-on-one conversation with Jane. So the individual authorization pointers, it really is best for family or collateral contacts. And I would say, please try to obtain at least one, because sometimes our clients are hard to reach and family members tend to know where their loved ones are at. And so this is a benefit to us in our ongoing engagement with our clients. Again, it only allows for one-on-one information sharing, and we cannot redisclose any of the information received through those communications. What I'll remind you on all of these forms is that when disclosures are made, so if I'm talking to Jane and Jane starts asking lots of questions, even if we have permission to talk to Jane, we are always limited by the phrase minimum necessary. And it has to be within one of the listed purposes that's checked off. So if Joe says the only thing Jane's allowed to know is my appointment time, I don't want to share my toxicology results, and Jane wants to know if her husband tested positive for anything, you can't do it. Even if everything is checked, we have to think about, is this really something that needs to be shared? And if you have a concern, then we just need to rely on this minimum necessary concept. The next sample authorization is a group authorization, and we have, this one is for ACJS. This authorization allows for group conversations. So if there's a meeting and all the people on this authorization are present and tasked with sharing information about the client, we've made clear to the client that all of these people may be getting together to talk about your progress. So we're going to be okay sharing information in that setting. It also allows us to redisclose information from one person, for instance, from the treatment provider, to another person on the list, such as the judge or the probation officer. If we had just signed the individual authorization with the treatment provider, it would allow me to contact Gateway, find out how my client is doing, and receive the information from Gateway, but I'm not allowed to do anything else with it. So when the judge says, how's treatment going for the client, I won't be able to redisclose it because it was not meant to be part of a group conversation, or it was not meant to be redisclosed. It was only a private conversation between me and the treatment provider. This is an area where we've seen some confusion. Hopefully this concept of redisclosure will help you understand that sharing information between people on the list can only happen through a group authorization. So in the sample forms, we tried to second guess the people that would be part of the authorization. For ACJS, at the very least, you would want to list your judge who referred the case to you, the probation officer, state's attorney, and public defender that are all involved in the case. The sheriff, especially if you have someone who's currently in custody and they need to be released to task so that you can perform services, assessments, and other services. Treatment provider, you may have more than one. They all need to be on this form. Same with service provider. So you might have someone providing some services that aren't treatment, but nonetheless They are helping to serve the client. If it's relevant to any kind of redisclosure or reporting on client progress, then they need to be listed here. Continuing with the group authorization concept, but a different sample for a problem-solving court. That's a little different setting. They literally do have team meetings, and so we have to be clear about that. And there are some additional people that are involved in the meetings. So you'll see the same players that was on the ACJS authorization, but when you look to the right of the blue arrow, you'll see two new parties listed. One is a court coordinator, the other is the court treatment team. We are actually naming the team, we're giving it a name, and we realize that at times your judge may invite someone to the treatment team meeting that we didn't expect to have come. It's important for our clients to know that there is a team that will wrap around and receive information about their care and progress. And so if we happen to be at a meeting when the judge invites someone new and we were not able to get permission to talk to that person, we are, as an agency, trying to cover and allow you to continue to have those conversations because we did disclose that there would be a court treatment team, and we have permission to share this with the whole team. I would say that if someone becomes a regular attendee of the court treatment team, what you need to do is add that name or those names to the group authorization and have it re-signed by the client. We always want to be as specific as possible, but we need to allow ourselves some wiggle room for some of the realities that take place. I'm going to do one more sample of group authorization, give you some pointers, and then I'm going to check in and see if you have any questions about this. The last sample we have is for CTP. And so there we would anticipate that you might need to talk to IDOC, which is part of parole, as well as AMS. And then again, a treatment provider, so we use Gateway as an example, and a service provider, potentially CSAC South or other treatment providers. Again, in CTP, these individuals are not all going to be sitting in a room together having a group conversation, but you need to be able to redisclose what the treatment provider says to you to parole, and maybe some of the other combinations of individuals here. So the group authorization is absolutely required. Group authorization pointers, best for referral sources, treatment providers, service providers, and teams. It allows for the group information sharing as well as redisclosure. Again, if anyone on the list changes or a new group, if anyone on the list changes, a new group authorization would be required. And then when you are making actual disclosures, they're limited to the minimum necessary within the listed purposes. Now, I think we've kept everyone unmuted, so feel free to type in or just speak up and let me know if you have any questions about group authorizations or individual authorizations.
Well, actually, Michelle, I had a question I just wanted to make sure that we were all clear on. When you, in the packet, have these samples, you have CTP and problem-solving courts and ACJS, those aren't separate forms. We're just seeing an example. In other words, they can't find a form that says ACJS group authorization.
Art, you're exactly right. The individual authorization, we just gave you a sample of how to complete it for the family member. And then for group authorization, we wanted to give you more of a variety of what these forms would look like in real life. So we gave you a sample for a couple of different settings. And I would say if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. First, reach out to your director, but reach out to me as well. Might need to be on the list, or if you're not certain if someone should be on the list, and I'm glad to give you some guidance.
Not liking that.
Okay, and I don't hear any questions, but I also realize that there might be some technology challenges, or maybe you guys don't have any questions. We will continue to offer Q&A opportunities moving forward, but I'll just keep on working through the materials here. The next form we have is the guarantee. And again, I copied onto this slide the portion of the guarantee that I wanted to talk about. And a couple of points I need to make here. You can see the boxes that should be checked. And the key thing here is that it's important to find out when you first start working with the client how we're likely to be paid for these services. And so we keep DHS and HFS on board just for all of them. So those come pre-checked. If there's any chance at all that the Department of Child and Family Services would be paying for your services, make sure that's checked. There might be private pay insurance, so you can see the client or parent or guardian insurance company or employer. There's also the managed care organization, and we have found out that about 50% of our clients have Medicaid, and some of those are through the General Revenue Fund, many of them are through an MCO, and we have the other half are uninsured, and so we would be paid by the state of Illinois. For the MCOs, it's really important that you verify which MCO is providing care. We provided in your packet the list of MCOs that would be available, and we're also going to ask you to use the exact language that we put on the handout when you specify which MCO it is. And for here, you'll see Illini Care is given as your sample MCO. We did that for a reason. Not only do we want to show you an example, but Illini Care is our special child at the moment. They are involved in an IHPA. It is a way of having one consolidated place collect and redistribute information about clients. It tends to be for payment, treatment, and referral source information. And so when we work with our Illini Care clients, you literally need to type in Illini Care, semicolon, Illinois Health Practice Alliance, comma, LLC, and participating providers in the IPA network, see attached list. So it is a handful, but we need you to use the exact language for that. I'll explain a little bit more about that. I won't get too far into the weeds, but just be aware that because of some different relationships to comply with HIPAA and 42 CFR Part 2, we do need to disclose that Illini Care information is going to be further shared with this broader group. So you can see here the list of Illinois MCOs. The only one at this point that has that lengthy language is Illini Care. If that changes, we'll let you know. Another one, if you look at WellCare Meridian, we do have some extra information that you need to specify there. So we're just asking that you take extra care when you're typing in your MCO names. And the guarantee pointers, make sure you check for payer sources before completing this form. It's also a best practice to ask at each check-in. Just like when you go to the doctor's office, they want to make sure insurance didn't change. We need to be able to make good use of payer sources, and so we need to ask the same question. And if there is a change, go ahead and log into ECR and make sure you fill in the new information into the new guarantee. Don't leave any people off that could be a potential source for payment, but make any updates or changes and have the client sign the new form. Again, use the exact language for the MCO. There are legal reasons for this, and so we're trying to give you the A answers, but we need you to copy the exact language that we provided. If insurance or any other payer coverage changes, we do need a new guarantee. Insurance coverage changes during certain times of year, so you'll see open or initial enrollment periods. So if your client gets a job, they may have an insurance change. Make sure that you check with them about that. Every year there are open enrollment periods, just like we have at TASC, where you can change your coverage, and then there are certain qualifying events, so marriage, having children, things like that. If you check with your clients at each check-in, that'll make it easy. And then also just be aware insurance changes are effective on the first day of the following month. So if you're doing Medi-checks, that will give you some thought about how to be strategic. And if you have 3 clients that based upon Medi-checks their insurance have changed, and you weren't planning on having an in-person meeting this month, you might consider it because now you were alerted that we need updated forms, and the best way to get that is to see them in person. So with all of that being stated, any questions about the guarantee? Okay, we will move on. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned that I would talk a little bit more about this IHPA, the Illinois Health Practice Alliance. There's a lot of details I could give you, but basically the IHPA facilitates information sharing among participating providers, and TASC is one of those. They share such things as treatment referral information, payment information, and they also do information sharing for the purposes of quality assurance. We're all familiar with HIPAA. HIPAA actually allows this kind of electronic health exchange, and we don't need to do extra paperwork for HIPAA, but we need to do this for Part 2, which covers our substance use disorder information. And the challenge is really when we need to redisclose any information. We do have agreements with the IHPA, and when they receive our information initially, we're covered. But like many of the other instances we've talked about, it's not just one-way or two-way communication. It's going to be broadcast out to additional parties. So how do we handle that? I already showed you on the guarantee that we need the additional information listed as well as the see attached list, and you actually have to share with them the list of providers. I'll talk to you about that nuance in a moment. And then I'm showing you on the screen a group authorization. Again, it's the same group authorization form, but now the sample is specifically for Illini Care. For all of your Illini clients, what you will need to do is fill out an additional group authorization that looks exactly like this one. So this is more than a sample. This is exactly the way it needs to be without any deviation at all. On the first line, we're going to type in for the type of entity, it's a health information exchange. That's a legal term of art, and so we have to have that exact phrase. The organization, we need the exact legal name, so Illinois Health Practice Alliance, LLC. The primary contact is literally Nia Scruggs, and so you'll put her name and her address. And then in the second line, the type is also going to be the participating providers in the IPA network. We can't list them all here, so we're just going to say see attached list. The organization that sharing is done through, again, is IHPA via NIA, and you see her address. And then one other thing on the form that you'll note is that you need to check the box other, in addition to all the boxes that are checked, and type in the phrase quality assurance. That is a purpose of the IHPA, and we have not included that as a standard purpose on our form. So the IHPA pointers, which right now only apply to Illini Care, is that we need to use the exact language quoted under item 1, and you'll also see that same quote on the MCO list. You'll complete a guarantee with that exact phrase and also the separate group authorization, exactly as I showed you in the sample, including quality assurance as one of the purposes on that new and extra group authorization. The clients have to receive a current list of the participating providers. And under number 4, you'll note that as a provider list is updated, you will need to obtain a new guarantee and a new separate group authorization, because we need to, and of course you'll provide the updated provider list. We cannot grandfather new providers in. We literally, once new providers are added, and because this information could be shared with all the providers, we do need you to re-up the authorizations with the updated list. I am going to pause here to see if you have any questions. All right, and so seeing none, we'll move on to the permission for electronic communication. There aren't any major updates or concerns that we've seen here. So you can have voicemail, email, or text messaging. We need to know the exact numbers or email addresses to send the information to. Please remember that we are not asking for permission to share any protected health information. That even includes the fact that a client is a TASC client, that a client has a substance use disorder. So we need to be very careful and mindful of the language that we're using if you leave a voicemail message or send an email or a text. We understand that the client may come back to us with all kinds of private information that's out of our control, and that's within their decision, but we cannot push out from us anything that would fall along the lines of protected health information. I would encourage you to find out the client so that we can maintain engagement and make it convenient for them. And also, if they want us to talk to collateral contacts via voicemail, email, or text, we would need those phone numbers as well. Of course, we realize that these numbers can change, and so this is another good question to ask every time you check in with your client. And so the reminders, although it's not required, this is a very important form and useful form to fill out to facilitate electronic communication. We do not share any protected health information, and we'll need to keep this one up to date. I'm sure you're all chuckling at the easy button. What I'm going to do is roll over into general questions and answers. And I'm hoping that silence is an indicator that everything is well understood and not challenges with technology. But I would invite you, if you are for whatever reason having
opening up the other people.
Okay, we're opening up everyone except for Ron. Ron, we're getting a lot of feedback off of your line. I would also invite you, if for some reason you feel like you were not able to share questions, if you send me an email, I have my phone with me and I'm going to watch my emails and can read the question off of there if this platform isn't working.
Everybody's mic should be open now, except Ron. Yeah, this is a speak now, forever peace moment.
Okay.
Everybody but Ron. So.
All right, well, at this point, I appreciate everyone participating in the webinar. We do have it recorded, so if you have some confusions or if you need to share this with our colleagues, feel free to go ahead and listen to it. You can also reach out to me directly. You have my email and my phone number, and I will let you go for the rest of the afternoon. Happy Monday.
Thank you.